Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This is the funeral of athletics, a furious response from Moscow after sport's highest tribunal upheld the doping ban for their entire athletics team from the Rio Olympics. It's increased pressure on Olympic chiefs to exclude Russia from the Games altogether, despite claims by officials that they've taken steps to clean up the sport. That would plunge the Olympics into its biggest crisis for decades, as our chief correspondent Alex Thompson reports.
Russian state-sponsored doping has wrecked the reputation of the Winter Games in Sochi. Its spectre hangs heavy over the medals they won across the London Olympic Games. And today a ban on 68 Russian track and field athletes heading for Rio, they thought, next month, was upheld by World Athletics Court of Appeal in Switzerland.
The Court of Arbitration for Sport has dismissed the request filed by the Russian Olympic Committee and 68 Russian athletes.
It's him in London for the anniversary games and dope tested only this morning, Usain Bolt. Here to talk running, but asked about cheating.
If you feel like banning the whole team is the right action, then I'm all for it, you know what I mean? Because as I said, rules are rules, and the doping violation in track and field is getting really bad. So if you feel like you need to make a statement and this is how you feel like you need to make a statement, then thumbs up.
Like the man says, rules are rules. But in London, there's a genuine sense of anger that the Olympic Games here, seen at the time as a glorious expression of drugs-free sport, are now somewhat tarnished by what's happened in Russia. Over in Moscow, though, today the news was received very, very differently.
These Russian athletes, coming up for the bell in the last training lap to Rio, say they've all been unfairly tarred with the same brush. Their sports minister, with no sense of irony, talking about human rights being abused.
Even if the athletes won't make it to the Olympics, I think it's time to probably go to the civil courts, because these rules are prejudiced against human rights.
Collective punishment, the funeral of athletics. Official responses from Russia. Moscow is incandescent. But what of her athletes and coaches themselves?
This decision is really frustrating. For some reason, clean sportsmen who have never been caught doping will have to carry this responsibility for everyone else. I wouldn't want this to ever happen again.
People who had a triumph at the Olympics as their life goal are now having their dream taken away. This is not right, and I think there's a political factor in this story.
But the facts are, Russia conducted one of sport's largest ever state-sponsored cheating scandals, uncovered not by World Athletics, of course, but by investigative journalists.
It's hammered into the coaches, and the coaches then hammer it into the athletes.
You clearly could see that the officials are trying to make sure that some athletes are not being tested.
We have found cover-ups, we found destruction of samples in the laboratories, we found payments of money in order to conceal doping tests.
Well, that was then, but tonight there are calls for the entire Russian contingent for Rio to be banned. That's well over 500 athletes, not just the 68 track and field already grounded. No fewer than 11 national anti-doping agencies are now demanding just that. And the International Olympic Committee will have to decide upon it next week. Alex Thompson, Channel 4 News, Central London.
Well, joining me here in the studio is the former British Olympic relay athlete Andrew Steele, who believes he may have missed out on a medal at the Beijing Olympics due to doping in the Russian team. And from Moscow is the Russian journalist Dmitry Babich. Mr. Babich, your athletes appealed. The Court of Arbitration for Sport has ruled against them. The ban stands, and that's right, isn't it, that it should?
No, it's absolutely not right, because indeed we have been told many times by our Western partners that it's an important Western value. You better let 10 criminals go unpunished than punish one innocent person. And here we have hundreds of athletes who never failed any tests outside Russia or inside Russia. They will simply, they won't be able to go to Rio. And what is worse, this ban has already hurt thousands of other Russian athletes who don't go to Olympic Games but who go to less competitions around the world. So it is clearly not right.
But Mr. Babbage, the World Anti-Doping Agency made it clear that they believe there was a culture of widespread state-sponsored doping, and that is key, isn't it? State-sponsored doping. So in a sense, a collective punishment, but for a collective act of doping.
Well, you used a very correct expression, that they believe. If you watched this presentation by WADA's commission, headed by Richard McLaren, not an athlete, but a lawyer from Canada, he never showed a single photograph. He said that he had hundreds of emails confirming his view that there was state involvement, but he didn't show a single email. He didn't play a single voice recording of Russian officials who were allegedly involved in all of this. You know, I teach at school on Saturdays at the high school. A high school student with, you know, making a presentation with no photos or no quotes would get a D from me. So that was just very strange, you know, a lot of assertions without any proof, without any documents shown to the public.
There was quite a lot of proof in the investigative journalism that proved this doping in the first place, that it uncovered this doping.
You know, since when is investigative journalism entitled to ban people from going to the Olympics? You know, I am a journalist myself. I made mistakes in my reports. Everyone makes mistakes. Journalists are not judges, and it's very strange that you know, Court of Arbitration for Sports simply believes everything McLaren says without any cross-examination of witnesses, without any, you know, Mr. McLaren said himself that he never contacted the Russian side about this, that all of his allegations are based on what Grigory Rodchenkov, you know, that former Russian officials who defected to the United States said.
Mr. Babbage,
and he started, Rodchenkov started making his revelations after defecting to the United States. He was completely free to do it in Russia, and actually no one barred him from leaving Russia. If he had been under FSB surveillance, he would have never made it to the United States in the first place.
Andrew Steele, you lost out in a medal in Beijing, and your race is being looked into. What do you make of today's decision?
Well, it's certainly not like a positive. We shouldn't be celebrating that we've reached this point. And bizarrely, 2 weeks out from the Olympic Games, you know, this, for some reason, this has only come to fruition so close to the Games itself. But my point of view is that this is, in fact, going to be unfair on a number of athletes, I'm sure, but how else do we elicit change if this is indeed the culture, if this is indeed the problem, which is from the top down, rather than a collective or individuals who through greed chose to cheat? This is a top down,
of which there are across many countries.
Exactly, and this is the thing, you know, this is always the problem in sport we face. There's individuals who choose to cheat, and we ban them if they're found to be guilty of that. However, when it comes from the top down system this way, I can't see any other way we elicit change than a blanket ban, unfortunate though that may be.
What are the chances, do you think, of the sport being cleaned up, of sport in general being cleaned up?
We're never going to completely clean sport up, of course not. There's in every realm of life, there's always going to be cheats, there's always going to be people that bend the rules. However, if we don't make a big move like this, that is then carried out consistently in the future for any other federations that are shown to be the same, we're not going to get to an even cleaner version of the sport than we have now.
Mr. Babbage, really quickly, if you would, 11 nations have now written to the IOC saying Russia should be banned from all sports in the Olympic Games. Do you agree that that is now a possibility?
Well, this is the most frustrating thing. Politics involved in sports before, in 1980, you know, when the Moscow Olympics were boycotted. But then these were politicians who did it. Now, unfortunately, athletes support politicization of sports. This is a very dangerous new development. Until now, athletes were friends. So even when politicians spoiled the games, athletes were against it.
Dimitri Babbage, Andrew Steele, I'm really sorry we have to leave it there. Thank you both very much.
I've been getting away with it all.